Good morning.
Tell us then just a little bit about your national food strategy. I suspect there will be some in Whitehall who might do a Sir Humphrey Appleby and describe it as bold.
Well, it's intended to be both a manifesto and a strategic plan. The food system in our country is a miracle and a disaster. We saw it in COVID. Food companies worked to get us food, but also it was a huge factor in what was killing people. And we need to create a food system that is good for us and good for the planet. And we say that you need to do 4 things. You need to break the junk food cycle to protect the NHS. We need to reduce health inequality. We need to use our land better, and we need to change our food culture in the long term.
Well, let's talk about the junk food aspect of the strategy. And, of course, plenty of people have happened upon the tax that you're proposing on sugar and salt. What evidence is there that the costs in those circumstances would just simply not be passed on to consumers who prefer their food to be a little bit saltier and more sugary?
Well, I think the first question is, why have a tax at all? Everyone thinks in this country that the primal mode of thinking is that the way to solve obesity and diet-related disease is through education, exercise and willpower, and people who don't have the willpower, by corollary, deserve what is inflicted upon them. But actually none of that's true. Exercise did not help you lose weight. It's brilliant in many ways, but it doesn't help you lose weight. And there is a strong genetic component in some people that makes them particularly attracted to these foods. Companies market it at them, they eat more, companies spend more money on it, and you need to break that commercial cycle, and that's what the tax is intended to do. And there's a lot of evidence from the reformulation. It's a reformulation tax in sugar and salt. There's a lot of evidence from sugary drinks that they'll reformulate rather than pass on the cost, from Mexico, from Hungary. So we are confident that this is a tax that will take out the worst, make the worst foods a bit better for people. It's not enough on its own, but it is necessary to make the transformation.
Yeah, I mean, presumably the other aspect to it is people preparing their own low-fat, low-sugar, low-salt meals to go along with not eating the junk food. But, you know, that does require time. And in a society such as ours, how likely is it that people getting home after a long day at work are going to spend the half hour, the hour and a half it might take to prepare that meal rather than just reaching into the freezer?
Yeah, well, I think you're right. It does take time and it takes skills, and it's a long-term transition. We've put in place a recommendation for a huge education package on cookery and nutrition, because we've lost the skills through 3 generations. And that's why, that is going to take time. We eat more processed food than any other country in Europe, about 50% compared to 14% in Italy. And we need to shift that and eat more unprocessed food, cook more fruit and veg, but we can't wait for that transition, which is why we need to make the processed food, the worst food, better for us.
The strategy, Mr. Dimbleby, was widely trailed as
skills.
Sorry to interrupt. The strategy, as advertised, as pre-built, certainly people were expecting to see quite a lot in it about reducing the amount of meat that we eat. I was speaking with someone from the National Farmers Union just a little bit earlier on today. They made the point that actually what you're suggesting is less of the junk meat rather than, the steaks and the beefy bakes that I'm particularly fond of.
Yeah, there is about 6 chapters of 16 on meat. It's a very, very complicated topic, and not all meat is equal. We need to reduce our meat eating by about 30%. We cannot meet our carbon targets or our nature targets unless we do that. It just takes up too much land. But there is a way of doing that by cutting out the processed stuff and keeping the roast chicken, the steak, the things that we really enjoy. So I think there's a way through on meat that actually we as a country can navigate and still have the kind of landscapes that we enjoy so much, that make up such a big part of our kind of cultural heritage.
I suppose the key question then, Mr. Dimbleby, is what is the likelihood of the government listening to you in all of this, introducing a sugar tax, a salt tax, reducing our reliance on junk food, when you have in Boris Johnson a populist in number 10?
Well, I think Boris Johnson's changed, right? So his experience during COVID has fundamentally changed the way he thinks about the food system and our need to do something about it. But kind of to answer the question more broadly, whenever you do, I've done 3 now of independent reviews, and whenever you do one, you know that your work is not guaranteed to be taken up. And so you do everything you can to communicate it in a simple way, to bring coalitions around the recommendations. And in the last two reviews that I've done, almost everything's been implemented, and I will be doing my utmost to make the case for the government to implement these things, which are doable, practical, and we think will make a real transformation of the food system.